Well, the Taliban security forces in Kabul have been enforcing the higher education ban for women by blocking their access to universities. Despite initially promising a more moderate rule respecting rights for women and minorities, the Taliban have widely implemented their interpretation of Islamic law, or Sharia, since they seized power back in August of 2021. Joining me now is Andrew Fox, Senior Lecturer at the Royal Military Academy in Sandhurst. Thank you, Andrew, for joining me. I remember back to that withdrawal time when the US forces were leaving and then we had to leave too. And there was a sense that this was a different Taliban in 2021 than there had been in 2001. Surely this now shows that this is the same Taliban that we're dealing with.
Of course, it's the same Taliban, and I think the sort of propaganda they pushed out that they were thinking about changing their position and becoming more moderate was always really just a fig leaf to cover up the fact that they were going to slowly bring in the same old policies and inflict the same old constraints upon their society.
Yeah, and back in 2001, of course, when we took over from the Taliban, the Allies took over in 2001, there were no girls in schools. And then that rose to about 3.6 million in 2018. They have then progressively dismantled women's rights in the country. What more should we be doing to highlight this, Andrew? Because it is an absolute scandal.
Yeah, and I think we need to just dig into those statistics a little bit further. You know, until yesterday, 21% of Afghan university students were women. We're now on day 461 where girls aren't allowed to go to secondary education. And, you know, the corollary to that is that professions like midwifery are going to not have the qualified people they need to help child mortality rates. And Afghanistan's already one of the worst countries in the world for that. So I think when we dig into the statistics, you know, it's almost hard to underestimate just how much Afghanistan is the worst country in the world to be a woman at the moment. Now, what do we do about it? That's the really tricky thing. I mean, it was costing $45 billion a year to keep a military presence in Afghanistan. And since we left, we've essentially cut their economy. There's almost no economy in Afghanistan because their foreign assets are frozen. No money's going into the country. And so the Taliban don't really have any incentive to change. Now, you could make a case that perhaps if we, you know, essentially allow money into the country, that might persuade them to be more liberal. But there's no guarantee that would work. And also, do we really want to be giving money to these appalling people? So it's a really tricky quandary. And, you know, there's no quick or easy solution, I'm afraid.
And I thought it was quite interesting, Andrew, that some other Islamic countries have spoken out against the actions of the Taliban in Afghanistan. So we had Saudi Arabia and Turkey saying that it was wrong to stop women going into education. Did you think that was significant?
Yeah, I mean, it does somewhat undermine the Taliban's argument that the reason they're doing everything they're doing is because Islam dictates that they have to. And you speak to the Afghan refugees who've come over here, and I've been working extensively with them for the last year. And, you know, they don't describe a version of Islam that I think anyone would recognise outside of those hardcore, you know, Taliban extremists who are currently running that country. So, you know, even in the Islamic world, their argument doesn't carry moral weight. And, you know, they've had so much to do with Qatar, they've had so much to do with other parts of the Gulf region, that hopefully they've got actually a better chance of persuading the Taliban to change their ways than we in the West do.
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting that actually Saudi Arabia, I would have expected Turkey to have spoken out, but Saudi Arabia I thought was quite interesting given that they have only allowed women to drive very recently. But the fact that they're stopping women, as you say, from even engaging in education for those fundamental issues like childcare and for paternity care is really, really very worrying, Andrew. But thank you for coming on today to speak to me on the show and for highlighting this issue again. Thank you.